Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, I mean, some of us of an older generation kind of remember the days of 2016 and the allegation that Russia had interfered in the 2016 election. The 2016 election was stolen by Putin, who, as the New York Times always tells us, gave direct orders, which they know absolutely guaranteed from the intelligence. He gave direct orders to Russian intelligence to intervene in the 2016 election to ensure that Donald Trump wins the election. The mechanics of this was always very hazy. You know, what was it? Was it those handful of Facebook ads that guaranteed that Trump would be elected, or was it the Steele dossier?
Was Macedonian kids.
Macedonian kids, or was it that ridiculous 5-minute meeting in Trump Tower that that was came to an end when they realized that they had no idea what this woman was talking about. But it was never exactly established, but they knew that Russia had interfered in the 2016 election, and that this action by Russia surpassed 9/11, Pearl Harbor, and maybe even throw in the Kennedy assassination into the mix. That it was that serious an attack on the United States. It was a direct attack on the United States. Maybe it was
Because Hillary Clinton lost.
exactly. So so that was then. And then we had a few years of ridiculous, pointless investigations, and of course, led nowhere. But now we have another case of election interference, and this is not getting a lot of mileage. It's the case involves the British Labour Party, which apparently is cock a hoop over its great victory on July the 4th in the UK when Keir Starmer, a very forgettable nondescript figure, managed to secure a landslide victory, even though he won fewer votes than exactly landslide, then fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn did in that disastrous election performance of 2019. So he's cock a hoop about it, and so they decided to help out the Democrats, and they did it by apparently recruiting Labour Party activists to come to the United States, about 100 of them. That's a bit, but if they say 100, it could well be more than that, to come to the United States and to work in the swing states. It was North Carolina and Georgia, and then curiously enough, even Virginia, which I didn't realize they regarded that as a swing state. And it sounds
These were
good.
all former colonies of the British
Yeah.
Empire. Okay.
So it sounds on the face of it like election interference, but the media have now gone into overdrive to insist that this is not election interference.
Oh, no.
This is all perfectly normal, perfectly open and above board, and that the only issue involved here is that the Republicans are pouncing. The Republicans are pouncing on this.
They always,
Uh, they're always pouncing. They're seizing and pouncing. When they're not pouncing, they're seizing. When they're seizing, they're not pouncing. Um, so I just want to just go over a few of these stories, and here we have the always the to start off the ubiquitous. No, I think yeah, no, I think this is the Washington Post, and we have no, this is the Telegraph. This is the Telegraph of the UK, and it has as its headline: Republicans outraged as Labour sends 100 staff to help Harris. Plan is outrage, Republicans say, and could damage relationship with UK if Donald Trump wins.
Oh,
Well, it might. You do have to kind of think about the future.
yeah, and considering the Trump ended his administration on a real low point on the special relationship,
Yeah,
so they're
exactly.
going to start a negative territory. I mean, way to go!
And again, as we've said many times, Trump is very much a transactional politician. He liked the Queen, but many other aspects of English life he didn't particularly like. He really loved the Queen, but he's not going to like Keir Starmer. I mean, that Keir Starmer is definitely not his cup of
Well,
tea.
Keir Starmer in a dress, it won't help him,
No, I
okay?
don't think so. And um, and then it says Labour is sending almost 100 current and former party staff members to the US to campaign for Democrats in swing states. Activists from Sir Keir Starmer's party will spend the next 2.5 weeks canvassing for Kamala Harris in 4 key battlegrounds ahead of the US election.
All right, stop.
Okay.
Define canvas here for me.
I don't know.
I mean, someone with a British accent is going to knock on your door?
That's a very interesting aspect of it, because these are people who are from Britain. Whatever part of Britain. What do they know about Americans and American life and American politics, American governance? How wherever you're working in Portsmouth, and now you're going to go to somewhere in North Carolina. How does that work?
I
And
wonder if
then
they're wearing red coats.
yes, yes, and you're right. They're going to go knock on people's doors, and then they say, "I have no idea what you're saying." They can't understand the accent. They're going to say, what language are you speaking?" I don't know. I don't understand your accent. They will target Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, which are all seen as crucial to Miss Harris's path to the White House. I mean, again, it is interesting, the choice of Virginia. I think that must be a kind of some British sentimentality.
Who came up with this idea? Again, wow, this is the stench of desperation is in the air.
There is some of that. There
You need
definitely is that.
foreigners to tell you how to vote in a domestic election?
Yeah, yeah,
Americans
yeah.
don't take well to that. They
That's
don't.
that's right. Yeah, it is. I mean, you're bringing in 100 people. That's a lot of people. Um, and then it says here, Republicans described the plans as an outrage and warned that they would damage the UK's relationship with the US should Donald Trump win the presidency. Elon Musk reacted to the news on X by saying this is illegal.
It may be, I'm not sure, but
Well, that's what I want to go over that, what exactly this says, because it says the Federal Election Commission, which regulates U.S. elections, states that foreign volunteers may not donate money to campaigns or spend money on their behalf. They cannot participate in the decision-making process, but they may, however, participate in activities as an uncompensated volunteer. But this isn't really correct.
uncompensated. Okay, somebody's compensating them. Okay, somebody
That's
is.
exactly the point. Somebody is compensating. You've got 100 people. Somebody had to pay for their airfares to come to the United States. They're going to be here, 2.5 weeks. So somebody's paying for their accommodation. Somebody's paying for their travel. Somebody's paying for their food and beverages. That's quite a lot of money.
I think we need to stress the beverage part as well.
Yes, that's a lot of money. So somebody's paying for it. Now, the Democratic Party, maybe they're not paying for it. But if it's the Labour Party that's paying for it, then it's hard to see how it isn't an in-kind contribution from a foreign entity. They're making an in-kind contribution, which is these people are working for the Democratic Party, and they're getting paid by a foreign, a foreign principal, as the way has it. So here we have, I think, the first of all, this is the tweet, and what was very funny. This is Elon Musk, who says this is illegal, and this was the original message, which has now been taken down, which is very interesting because this is Sophia Patel.
Yep.
Who's head of operations at the Labour Party. Generally, this is the case now in Britain. Almost everybody in politics has an Indian or some kind of a name. You don't have any Hendershot and Henderson and Braithwaite and these kind of traditional English names. They're all kind of Patel. I have nearly 100 Labour Party staff, current and former, going to the US in the next few weeks, heading to North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. I have 10 spots available for anyone available to head the battleground states of North Carolina. We will sort your housing. We, who's this we, will sort your housing.
Well, I didn't know that. So it's very small there. Is
Yes.
North Carolina a battleground state for the UK?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a part of the UK as far as I remember.
Oh,
And the
they have very hard feelings about it, George.
yes,
To this
yes,
day.
yes, that's right. That's why they got the tobacco. You know, that was all the tobacco plantations were there. So it says email me on laborforkamala@gmail.com. Labor for Kamala, if you're interested. So she's clearly recruiting. Labor for Kamala. It sounds exactly as the Labour Party is doing this now. Um, this this message, she posted it on LinkedIn, and it has been taken down. So it's all supposed to be open and above board. But what's hilarious is have the community. This is so the Elon Musk says this is illegal, and then the readers added context. They thought people would want to know. It's a little small. It says the FEC explicitly permits foreign nationals to serve as campaign volunteers. Well, I mean, if you go there and say, oh, I would just volunteer, but if you're recruiting, and this is a massive recruitment that's taking place in another country, and they're getting paid by essentially a Labour Party, and Labour Party is currently in power in the UK. I think it's a little more than just simply just a volunteer. It is.
So she's recruiting, but you have to pay for it?
Well, but the one I was saying, well, you can do it. Apparently, they say, oh, it's legal as long as long as you're a volunteer. But how are these people volunteers? I mean, it's like, well, because if you get, somebody has to pay for them, unless they are people with independent means. And I don't know who has such independent means that they can just fly out to the United States and spend 3 weeks in the United States, traveling and so on, gallivanting around, and they can just dip into their own pockets to pay for it. That's quite an expense.
Nice. Must be nice.
I mean, so the point is somebody's paying for it. So this whole thing, oh, they're volunteers. Somebody is paying for it. And then Sophia Patel, Labour's head of operations, said in the LinkedIn post, so that's the one, blah, blah. We just looked at that. And then they bring up an unhappy memory because in 1992, John Major, he had just won, again, like Starmer, he had just won a surprising victory in the British general election. And George H.W. Bush was really underwater against Bill Clinton. So he decided to help out George H.W. Bush, and he sent some advisors. So it wasn't quite 100 people who were going to be knocking on doors. He sent some advisors, the people who advised him how to win the election.
I remember this.
Yeah. But and then he says, and then he said the Home Office also inspected its records to see whether Mr. Clinton ever applied for British citizenship to avoid the Vietnam draft. Again, not a nice thing to do. Bill Clinton was heading for victory, and this was something he was going to remember. However, nothing was discovered, and Mr. Clinton proceeded to comfortably beat Mr. Bush, prompting Sir John to write a letter of apology to the US president-elect. There's no evidence that Mr. Clinton ever replied, but his refusal to meet Sir John later that month was widely viewed as a snub. And and then we have this.
Where is the upside of that story for John Major?
There's no upside. There's no upside. I mean, if you interfere in another country's election and you pick the wrong side, then you're going to suffer adverse consequences. I mean, it's just I mean, it was obvious that Bill Clinton. I mean, he's not going to break off diplomatic relations with the UK, but Bill Clinton is not going to be exactly very happy with Major's approach. And then he says, Trump, this is the classic. This is Politico. Trump allies rage at UK Labour help for Kamala Harris. There's more to come. And then says, some US progressives see Britain's Keir Starmer as a lone center-left warrior if Donald Trump wins. So,
here we
I love this lone center-left warrior if Donald Trump wins.
and the import of that means that somehow Stalmer is going to be the
leader
of the Western world. They did that. We did this with the Merkel thing.
Exactly. We did exactly the thing. We did this with the Merkel thing. Exactly. Merkel is now the leader of the Western world. Yeah. Yeah. Britain. This is so dumb. Precisely because you don't get to be a leader unless you've got a certain amount of weight behind you. I mean, Britain doesn't have the economic and military muscle to be the leader.
So the Brits are going to say they're going to intentionally, break with the United States, snub Donald Trump. Well, the Germans did it with their energy. I guess the British can do it too. This is insane.
And it may be riling up Donald Trump's supporters, but don't expect the love-in between the US Democrats and the UK Labour Party to let up anytime soon. Allies of the US Republican presidential candidates are seizing on news that a delegation of 100 current and former Labour staffers plans to knock on doors for Democratic rival Kamala Harris ahead of the presidential election.
I just, George, what's the goal here? Why would 100 Brits?
I don't get it. I agree.
I don't get it at all. I mean, canvassing, knocking on doors, they're going to say, that's a really interesting accent. I heard it on Netflix once.
Is that the way you talk?
Nobody in these parts ever heard someone talk like that before. Now I'm going to tell Billy John down the street that I met this guy with this accent. It's from TV.
Yeah, what kind of accent do you call that, fella?
And why are you here?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I just don't get it. I don't get it.
I'm also puzzled by this because at least I understood the major thing because apparently they had some brilliant strategy.
No. I remember that story very, very well. And what it was just some political strategists that were exchanging notes, essentially.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Which I suppose, look, even strategists in the United States, if you're Republican or Democrat, you look how elections in Europe play and what issues. I mean, that's all fair game.
That's fair game, except that precisely because there were two different countries, two different systems of government, two different political situations, that there was nothing, basically the major strategic advisors had nothing useful to impart to George H.W. Bush.
Digging up dirt? That's not a strategy.
No. But I don't get, because is there a shortage of canvassers in the United States? I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I've thought that people are desperate to campaign for Kamala. I mean, it's down the wire. I would have thought there isn't really a shortage of people doing this. So it is baffling what the goal here is. And then pro-Trump tech billionaire Elon Musk even accused Labor of illegal election interference, a claim that looks shaky, given federal election law explicitly permits foreign citizens to campaign in the US, provided they are unpaid. But they are paid. I mean, it's just wrong. I mean, no one is saying the Democratic Party is paying them, but somebody is paying them, and therefore whoever is paying them is making an in-kind contribution to the Democratic Party. And therefore, this it's such a stupid point to say, well, provided they're unpaid, that it doesn't matter whether the Democratic Party is paying them. Somebody is paying them. The trips are being undertaken by Harris supporting Labour volunteers in a personal capacity rather than at the formal behest of the UK's governing party. Those taking part are expected to foot the bill for themselves and do it on their own time. But what's the evidence for this? You see, Politico writes this, but there's no link to anything. What is the evidence? I haven't seen any evidence. That LinkedIn statement that by that Labour Party, it didn't say, "Oh, but you have to pay for it out of your own pocket," because that would be the first question everybody's asking. Hey, who's going to pay for this trip?
The smoking gun is in Patel's message, her
Right,
email address.
right,
If you want to go contact, I just,
yeah,
contact the Harris campaign if you want to do this, okay?
right,
Good service and
right,
announce, okay? But no,
exactly.
it sounds like contact me
That's
and
right.
I'll make the arrangement. That's what it implies and
That
leads.
exactly the housing. We will arrange the housing, so they're taking care of expenses. I mean, that's the implication. So this is just simply made up. Politico often does this. In fact,
All the
usually
time.
does it. Just completely make it up. Oh, they're expected to foot the bill themselves. Who are these people? 100 people who can just simply go for a 3-week trip to the United States, and pay for it out of their own pockets?
George, imagine how impoverished our podcast would be without Politico. So we should be thankful.
That's very true. Very, very true. So now this is what the federal law says. It says federal law prohibits contributions, donations, expenditures, and disbursements solicited, directed, or received, or made directly or indirectly by or from foreign nationals in connection with any federal, state, or local election. But this again, it is a contribution. It's an in-kind contribution, but it is a contribution. And election law says, yeah, there is something called in-kind contribution. It doesn't necessarily have to be financial, but it's an in-kind contribution. This prohibition includes advances of personal funds, contributions, or donations made to political party committees and organizations, state or local party committees, for the purchase or construction of an office building, funds under blah blah, and contribution or disbursements to make electioneering communications, which again may well be covered by that. And then it says foreign nationals are also prohibited from directly or indirectly donating to an inaugural committee, violation of federal law to knowingly accept such donations from a foreign national. And then, in addition, foreign nationals are prohibited from participating in decisions involving election-related activities.
Well,
Well, if you're
very vague.
campaigning,
That's very vague. Okay.
it's very vague. I mean, of course, it's very vague, but election, involving in decisions. Well, I assume it's anything can just be a decision involving election-related activities. I mean, where to go canvassing? Should we go to this housing estate or that housing estate? I mean, that's an election-related activity. A foreign national may not direct, dictate, control, or directly or indirectly participate in the decision-making process of any person with regard to the person's federal or non-federal election-related activities. Again, vague, but it does seem like it would cover this activity. This includes decisions concerning the making of contributions, donations, expenditures, or disbursements in connection with any federal, state, or local election. So, I mean, the point is,
this is not helpful.
it's not helpful. But if I were, if I were a lawyer on behalf of the Labour Party in the UK, I'd say this is, we're kind of skirting the law here. I mean, this is, they could easily, if they wanted, they could easily bring criminal charges against us for the violation of federal election law. Furthermore, it's a violation of federal law to knowingly provide substantial assistance in the making, acceptance, or receipt of contributions or donations in connection with federal, state, or local elections. So you get the sense. So the media, of course, jumping in. Oh yeah, everything is permitted. Well, not really. I mean, look at the federal election law. It's by no means clear that it is permitted. Anyway, and this goes on, the Politico goes on. Yet the exchanges are the latest clear sign of close ties between center-left strategists in America and their UK counterparts as the race for the White House hots up. And then they list all these campaigns. I've never heard of these.
Okay, well,
Campaign
I mean,
for the Center for New Liberalism.
what are we talking about? Okay, they go from canvassing to strategists.
That's right.
That's
That's
a that's a lot of
it's very,
bandwidth.
very vague. The point is that what I mean, what we're trying to figure out is what exactly are these Labor Party activists supposed to do in the United States? I mean, why does the Democratic Party need to hire them? I mean, there's no shortage of Democratic Party activists in the United States. Why do they need these labor people? And I imagine this is part of some kind of a symbiosis between these two parties. I don't know what the purpose of that is. Other than I guess they want to create some kind of a transnational anti-populist front, a transnational anti-Trump front, so that we can, they'll be on call to stamp out threats from populists worldwide.
Well, we did have the international in the interwar
Yeah,
period.
that's what it sounds like. They're trying to do this now. This a kind of a transatlantic or anti-populist organization.
Campaigners for the Center for New Liberalism. We don't need a new liberalism. We just don't need
We
liberalism.
don't exactly. We didn't care for the old liberalism either. Um, it says so. Then blah blah. But it says campaigners for the Center for New Liberalism, a Democrat-linked group, knocked doors for Labour leader and now Prime Minister Keir Starmer during the UK general election. So there were these Democrat Party activists. Again, they're going and knocking on doors. And I guess people. Let's say you're living in Manchester. You'll probably be a little bit baffled. Why are these Americans coming here knocking on my door and telling me that who I'm supposed to vote for?
Well, you live there, George. I mean, I visited many times, but I mean, they find Americans to be a bit curious. Okay, and that's being generous. But they really don't like. Okay, I
No,
mean,
I don't think so. No,
they
not
just
really.
don't. Okay,
No,
they just don't. I mean,
no.
Americans are captivated by the accent. They have their favorite British actor and actresses and all of that. But I mean, the Americans just find everybody kind of cute. Okay,
Right,
where are you from?
right,
Okay,
right. Yes,
but I
yes,
mean, people in the UK, because they're so overwhelmed by American culture, they know exactly who we are, and they don't see us as being part of them. That's for sure.
no, that's right. But there's also the question. I mean, when you have an election, I mean, an election is supposed to be a kind of a domestic affair. So when foreigners come in and start hectoring you and telling you, who you're supposed to vote for, particularly as they themselves are not even legally entitled to vote in the British election or here in the United States election, then it is a little puzzling. I think people are going to be some baffled. Why are you with an American accent telling me who I'm supposed to vote for? You don't even have a legal right to live here. But so that's why it's such a strange. um, Anyway, so then it goes on. Think tanks and campaign groups linked to Harris have long swapped campaign tips with their British counterparts, who unseated the Conservatives this past summer after a 14-year run in office.
That's different than what they're proposing. This is very
Yeah,
different.
no,
They don't want-
I
they're
agree.
trying to say it's just in a continuation of one from the other. That's not true. Not the way I read it, at
No,
least.
I agree with you that's something completely different. Though it's always puzzling because each political system is so different from another that you kind of wonder what kind of campaign tips can you do, because as soon as you start giving campaign tips, you say no, wrong, that's a very different system, it doesn't work like that in the UK. Just that's an American presidential system. There's nothing comparable in
Well,
the
and
UK.
also, I mean, it's very easy to broad brush things, but the Republican Party and the Conservative Party, they're very different
Very
animals.
very very different animals, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And some now see Starmer as a keeper of the center-left flame if Trump does win in November, amid a global swing to the populist right. So he's the keeper of the center-left flame. If Harris, this is now they're quoting this guy from the Center for New Liberalism, which, I just found out that it exists.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. If Harris does lose and Trump wins in November, the UK really has to step up in the West within liberal democracies and be the beacon for a lot of really important ideas.
Yeah, look how the UK is doing, everyone. I mean, the sitting prime minister, he's underwater already,
Right.
George.
We're going to come to that. The sitting prime minister, his poll standings right now. Um, but I love this kind of, the British have always been in love with the idea that they're a beacon of anything in the world. That somehow they're a beacon of democracy, a beacon of liberalism, a beacon of pluralism. They always imagine somehow in the world everybody really admires them, but that's because they only listen to people who say how, oh, I really admire the British. So with a thick accent. Oh, they really love the BBC. Oh, we have the best public broadcasting in the world. Oh, everyone loves the National Health Service. They always say all these
Except for Britons, anyway.
exactly for Britons. Nobody in Britain thinks highly of the BBC, but they always imagine, oh, around the world they all think very highly of the BBC. So the beacon, we're a beacon for a lot of really important ideas. Um, and then it says, again, this political article, alongside the US, governments across Europe are facing threats from right-wing populists. And then
Yeah, right-wing populists are always a threat. Have you
they're
noticed
always a
that?
threat. Yeah, exactly. They're always a threat.
And why can't we use the following nomenclature? Anti-liberal populists.
That's right. That's right.
Is it that would be more appropriate?
I think so. Yeah, and exactly. But they want to say far right, the sort of the far right, so you got a threat. So you have to be afraid of them. So now they talk about this Will Marshall, the kind of a name from the past, this Progressive Policy Institute. They were the ones who kind of invented the New Democrat. Bill Clinton was their creature. The New Democrat somehow moved away from the old Democrats. In other words, it became this. This is what the Democratic Party now is, which is big donors,
Yeah.
big money, and really very little of the traditional Democratic Party, of the Party of Labor, and so on. So that's really a creation of this guy Will Marshall. A Trump victory in November would galvanize ultra-nationalist parties across Europe, putting at risk Germany's shaky governing coalition in next year's election, and possibly leaving Starmer as the last major center-left leader standing on the continent. So there he's the kid on
Yeah, well, I mean,
on the deck.
okay, well,
Yeah.
as the last major center-left leader standing on the continent. So maybe there's something wrong
Yes.
with the center-left. I mean, if
Yes.
nobody wants it except
Right.
for the establishment.
Right.
Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, has Will Marshall considered that?
No, they never consider that. They always just seem that when people vote against the center left, it means that either it's the far right, which is they're threatening us and they got to bring in whatever the totalitarianism or whatever, or it's Putin. With one or the other, it can't possibly be anything that the center left is doing wrong. I mean, that's just simply impossible to think. So it's either or both. Far right plus Putin. So that's the only explanation.
But not poor governance.
No, exactly. No, exactly. Having no answers to any of the issues that people are concerned with. And then they quote this guy, executive vice president for the Third Way think tank. I heard about this Third Way. I think it's another one of these things that's been around since forever. Again, it's from back to the 90s, in the heyday of Clinton and Tony Blair, which was also the Third Way. The giant black hole spinning in the middle of this is Trump. If Trump wins, we live in a new world. It'll be Starmer alone, and God knows what will happen to the other Western democracies after that.
You correct me if I'm wrong, George, but Trump was president before, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's very funny because with all the hysteria now about this is going to be the last election, Trump wins, and Trump is, I think, and I think, was it, I think Anne Applebaum has just written an article in The Atlantic saying Trump is Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini, all in one. This is Anne Applebaum, Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini. Mussolini, the little brother, keep him in as well. And you think they were more or less saying the same thing 8 years ago. I mean, it's like, you're recycling all the same hysteria that they were peddling 8 years ago. I mean, he wasn't Hitler, he wasn't Stalin, he wasn't Mussolini. But they're doing exactly the same thing. Just as Bob Woodward is peddling again the story of the Putin must have something on Trump, that Putin is clearly blackmailing Trump.
When all else fails, go back to believing in unicorns.
That's right. And then here they go more. PPI, Third Way, and the Center for New Liberalism were among the center-left groups that began rebuilding links with Labour soon after Starmer became leader in 2020, taking over from a far-left predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn. Like-minded groups in the UK, blah, blah, such as Labour Together, Tony Blair Institute, and the Institute for Public Policy Research were also involved in these conversations.
I bet that was a fascinating conversation. Everybody thinking alike. Everybody thinks alike, okay?
That's right, exactly.
And then there you go. It just injects poison, Tony Blair. Okay.
Exactly. Now, Tony Blair Institute, we looked at that before. It's a very lavishly funded. They have, offices, plush offices in the center of London.
Very nice lobby. Nice lobby.
Very, very nice lobby. Nice, beautiful paintings. Those paintings alone cost plush. And our friend, the Finn chick, she got a job there, so she's going to be having a good time in there.
She's got a really nice mahogany desk. Jealous.
I'm sure she has. Yeah. And so I imagine the Tony Blair Institute probably picked up the check for the plush dinners that they all took part in for these conversations. And then a crucial Labour objective ahead of the UK election was also to shed the far left stigma of the Corbyn era. Far left stigma.
I'm sorry, this is news to me.
Okay. Yeah, which saw the party.
I mean, I guess for some people it's a stigma. I just think the destruction of Jeremy Corbyn is the destruction of what could have been. Okay.
That's right. Exactly. Because whatever else you say about Corbyn, it was a deliberate, targeted destruction of him. He had spent his whole political life concerned about the Palestinians. He had been right from the start of his political career. He had been a champion of the Palestinian cause. Nobody had ever called him anti-Semitic. This was entirely manufactured to claim that he's anti-Semitic.
What was the scandal at the time? What was the term for it? Where the MPs had extra payments.
Oh God, expenses. Was it expenses?
Certain term for it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason why I'm bringing it up, so here's the Labor Party had this closet anti-Semite for decades, and when they had the expenses account, where did Jeremy Corbyn live? He wasn't even on the list because he rode his bicycle to work.
That's right.
I had a tiny little apartment.
Yep, right.
No extra expenses that I know of.
No,
okay.
No,
and all these other people all across the political spectrum. But
that's right. That's right. And what we've now found out, again, why Starmer is now so unpopular, is he has these rich friends who buy him things. And so, it's perfectly legal because he declared it. But it's, well, this is a man who's making a lot of money. He's prime minister. He's making a lot of money, and yet he has rich friends who buy him designer glasses, who buy him expensive suits, who buy him concerts for Taylor Swift, who buy him tickets to Arsenal football matches. Why is somebody who's as wealthy as Keir Starmer getting rich friends to buy him all these things? And Corbyn never had it. No, Corbyn never had rich friends to buy him his suits and his luxury shoes. Now, this whole thing, we saw the party sink to its worst result in modern history. And then we need to bring this up. Labour, which won 412 seats, but only got 33.7% of the vote, so about a third of the vote. The Conservatives, who got, almost a quarter of the seats of Labour, yet only got, 10% fewer votes. And then if you look at Reform, which is the Nigel Farage party, so Nigel Farage's party and the Conservatives together, which are parties of the right, that would comprise 38% of the vote, 38%. So it would be much greater than Keir Starmer's 33.7, the landslide, his huge historic victory. And of course, as we said before, that Starmer's Labour Party won 500,000 fewer votes than Corbyn did in that horrible election defeat of December 2019. 500,000 fewer votes. Corbyn got more than 10 million votes. Keir Starmer got fewer than 10 million votes. Landslide Keir. And then here.
So why are they? I mean, Democratic strategists can read this data as well as we can. I mean, so you got actually fewer votes, and you're the center of in the universe of political thinking. I mean, I would just say the Conservative Party collapsed.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's the reason you have this ridiculous landslide. The Conservatives collapsed, not because anyone came to vote for you. They didn't want to vote for you. And now he's collapsed even further. You say this is October the 4th, so it's already more than 2 weeks ago. That's the last poll that we have. Labour is at 31%. Conservatives, they haven't improved. They're still at 23%. But Reform is 19%. Again, Conservatives and Reform together would be 42%. Well ahead of Keir Starmer. So again, you can see this is not a person who exactly enjoys great popularity in the UK. He's going to be there for a few years because there's no real mechanism to get him out. I mean, he's got a huge majority in Parliament, so he will survive any votes of no confidence unless his party turns on him, which of course they won't. But that's not anyone you want to be seeking political advice from. He's got a great thing. I mean, he did worse than Jeremy Corbyn. But again,
well, it's kind of interesting is that so for Solomon, we're going to have Ukraine and America. That's his two concerns. Okay, as his country continues to sink into the morass. Okay.
Yeah. That's it exactly. That's Ukraine, which is his preoccupation again, and Russia again. He's acquired all that hatred for Russia, and the economy. He's essentially punishing the people. Oh, we have to take budget cuts. So I'm sorry, elderly people. You're going to be freezing this winter. Granny is not going to get a heating allowance this winter. So that's Starmerism. So we've got to tighten our belt. But there's always money for Ukraine. Just like there's somebody's always going to be on hand to buy him expensive, Bruno Mali shoes. But and there's money for Ukraine. There just isn't money for Granny. That's tough luck.
That's liberalism.
Yeah, exactly. But again, just to, go back to the beginning, it is fascinating how this is essentially a non-issue. They're intruding into the U.S. election, but hey, non-issue.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing on Twitter one of these canvassers in Virginia. I really would like to know how that goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it for that. Okay.
But
George and I pointed out, election interference. Well, that's an acquired taste. It's up to you. Okay. It's just lies and hypocrisy. Either it's interference or it's not. Okay.
Yep.
This is what these people, is political, these really, really awful people of Politico, they say, no, 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 it's more complicated than that. No, almost all of these things are very simple. It's
Right,
right or it's wrong.
right,
It's
right.
pretty simple.
Yeah. But that's
Politico
really, yeah.
is an organ just to muddy the waters. That's
That's it.
all.
That's it. That's it. That's exactly it. And that's how it works. That is modern liberalism, which is you don't really believe anything other than how to hold on to power,
Yeah.
and therefore you just simply make up issues as you go along. Oh, democracy is on a ballot. We're a democracy. Democracy, democracy. Trump is a threat to democracy. Oh, and we need to keep Trump off the ballot. Going to make sure that that Trump's name doesn't appear on the ballot. All in the name of democracy. Democracy, democracy. Oh, and we're going to bundle Biden off the ticket, even though 14 million people voted for him. We just remove him, and we'll put Kamala Harris, and within 30 minutes. It's decided that she is now the party nominee, having not run for anything. It took all of 30 minutes from the moment Biden says, she's my successor, and then the party just simply rallied around her, all in the name of democracy. So it's just simply, you just make this up at any particular moment and to try and make it into a wedge issue.
It's liberalism.
Yep, it is liberalism. Yep.
And why, the UK is going to be a beacon. I mean, why do you think people are moving away from liberalism? It's because of just what George said. They always have a con. It's always a con there.
Yeah.
There's always an exception. There's always an exception,
Right.
No, people see through it. They're tired of it. See, George, if these people were solving problems, most people would give it a pass.
Right.
Okay, whatever. Okay, but they're not solving any problems. They're making problems worse.
That's right. Yeah. No, they're not solving problems. Instead, they're demonizing their opponents. It's just, again, this is what they're accusing the opponents. Oh, conspiracy theory and so on. But the only ones who are peddling conspiracy theories are these sort of these modern liberals, with Starmer about the far right, the danger from the far right. We got to open up the prisons because there are not enough prison spaces to shovel these people in who have been making memes on Facebook. They're the real danger to democracy. Some guy doing a meme on transgenders on Facebook. Yeah, he belongs to prison. And so that's how they do it. And again, if you look at Kamala Harris's whole campaign, it's just, I hate Donald Trump. That's it. You've got nothing else to offer other than you hate Donald Trump. It's like, I mean, you saw that interview with Brett Baer the other day. She had nothing to say. He asked all sorts of questions about her position, about the Biden administration. Her go-to answer was always Donald Trump, because that's all there is. Just demonizing your opponents. And same goes in Germany, and we could go through the rest of Europe.
He hasn't been president for 3.5 years. Why do 79% of Americans think the country's on the wrong track? It's because of Donald Trump.
It's because of Donald Trump.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration. Don't know. But I tend to think it's the latter and not the former.
Yeah, that's right. It's just that's it. And there's nothing else. And so again, that's the Keir Starmer. That's what they're doing in Germany. Well, what's the answer to the Alternative for Deutschland doing well in the recent elections? We must outlaw them. Yeah, we must ban them. They're a threat to democracy. That's people vote for them. They're a threat to democracy. Well, that's it.
Well, I really want to see one of those videos, the canvassing. Be worth it.
Okay. It will be worth it. I agree. I mean,
George brings up an interesting point before we finish this off here. It does seem like they're trying to create a Western international for liberal. So. It seems to be the case, which means that this is a very elite, niche ideology that is making a very small number of people extremely wealthy.
Right. And
they want to maintain that wealth and that influence. And they're going to start backslapping each other to keep it. Yes. Okay. That has nothing to do with democracy in sovereign countries. Okay.
No, I agree.
It's kind of maniacal to me, to be honest.
No, I think so. And I think that they see these various issues and where, you know, the populists are growing in strength, you know, like, for instance, you know, government using the public health issue to intrude into people's personal lives, into families and everything. So there's an issue again. Hey, populists are exploiting this issue. We need to crush that. Foreign policy. Populists are opposed to our policies. They're opposed to our spending billions and billions on a war that they don't understand and they don't approve of. And that's, how they plan to create this international, because what else are they really talking about? I mean, these are all different systems of government. I mean, if you have an experience of the British political system, you don't know about the German. You've got nothing to say to the German political system. It's completely different. So obviously, what they're doing is laying the groundwork for this transatlantic, transnational, anti-populist front.
Which George just, in other words, NATO land.
NATO, exactly. Exactly, and that is part of the populism is opposition to NATO. I mean, it hasn't yet been spelled out, but that's where it's heading. Because
you heard it here, because George and I are obviously thinking on the same wavelength here. Is that they don't want to? It's not said yet. It's not explicit. But if you just because of what George said, different political systems, different traditions, different types of parties, they're all very, very different in many ways. But if you go a little bit deeper, there is the populist movement left and on the right. Yeah. They see it's really NATO is at the core of all of it. Exactly. And that is really the essence of what George and I have, this entire existence of this podcast has been about.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's really what it's about. That that why this crackdown on free speech. They say, oh, because of Putin, because of that. Putin doesn't have any influence on European politics or American politics. It's not Putin. It's the populists that they hate. That's why they want to crack down on free speech. It's people in the West who are going to start asking questions about NATO and questions about Ukraine. I mean, a lot of people saying, hey, at the moment they get a whiff of the fact that, hey, there was all these possible agreements. I mean, not many people know about this. That there were all the agreements, Minsk, Istanbul, and it's the West, not Russia. It was the West that turned them down. The moment people get a whiff of this, they are going to turn on NATO, and I think that's the great fear. And so we mustn't have free speech at all because of Putin.
That's why, on a daily basis, George and I have talked about this privately, but they get rid of this person, this person, this. It's a trend. Every day, somebody gets knocked off social media just for the very reason that George explained right there, because they know that if it becomes common knowledge that this thing could have been over in 3 weeks, what?
Yeah.
And I mean, and the Germans, that pipeline might still be in existence.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. No, we can't possibly have people discussing that. And so how do we stop it? Well, we just bring up this completely fake, phony issue that somehow Russia has this huge influence, and that we've got to defend ourselves. We're all so frightened. We've got to defend ourselves from big bad Russia.
Liberalism is your enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, everybody. This is our first stab at our Sunday wrap up here. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com, and we'll be doing a live stream tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Please join us. Come with as many questions as possible. We love answering questions. It's we always have a lot of fun, and today and tomorrow, think about the tip jar situation, and we have this these chihuahuas, and say, in Mexico, it's the custom to put money into tip jars, that we have a different culture. We don't just keep up money in our pockets. We kind of distribute it around, and this Apple kind of wants to restore some of that Mexicanisms. He wants tequila and tips. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, maybe we can bring a little bit of the siesta into our lives. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.